All right, welcome and thank you everyone who joins the Internet of Value Foundation New York episode 96, and for all of those who come and listen to this information in the future. I hope you guys all find it as valuable as I know I do every single day, the diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives that come in here and speak. And Zara, thank you so much for joining so quickly. You're more than welcome to come up if you would like to, or if you have any thoughts on any of the topics above or anything you'd like to speak about. If not, I might be quiet for a moment. I'm going to let some more people join in, and I'm going to go get some content to post up top. But thank you for coming.
Hey, that's okay. I just got in and it popped up on my phone, so it's perfect timing, really. But yeah, I'm just here to listen mainly today. Haven't got a lot to say, but I'm definitely just here to listen and learn.
Well, thank you for joining. Any updates on some free world stuff? I mean, hey, you're up. If you'd like to speak about anything, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, it's been a bit crazy at the moment. We've just finished the accelerator program. Just had our demo day in Singapore. My CEO and CTO were over there. They're at the Singapore Tech Festival now for a couple of days. But yeah, just all crazy. We're trying to get everything all sort of ready for launching early next year. Yeah, there's just so much, but I won't take up too much of your space. But we'll be on the Treasury space on Tuesday for a full update if anyone's around for then.
Cool. Well, I look forward to it. I always try and join on Tuesdays before my space. Just give me a few moments. Just grabbing some content. I kind of so I put Gen AI and Gen AI in the title today. Generative AI specifically, right? Just because the last week or so, there's been a lot of conferences and discussions about it. And so I have a couple content videos from the World Economic Forum and DC FinTech Week that I'm going to post up top and I kind of go over. And it touches everything from models to governance to regulation. And then I kind of wanted to go spill over into the actual material makeups of what we are uh, over encompassing in this world, this word that we call artificial intelligence, and then some of the different types of materials and structural ways that they've developed the communication of the said electromagnetic frequencies in the materials that are used, and some of the differences between what's capable and model types that's using certain material types. And everybody in the space, well, you guys are all welcome up. Welcome, Rose, Dazzling, Fridge, MS. If any of you guys also want to type in the bubble, if there's anything you'd like me to specifically speak about, or if you just want to come up and change the topic, I'm not opposed to it at all. There's been this new update on Twitter that you have to click on the post you want to post up top beforehand. Like you can't see the little arrow anymore, so it makes you actually click on every post. It seems to make me take longer to get things because I have to click on it and then I click away. Sorry. Dazzling, welcome up, man.
Hey man, how you doing today?
Doing well. I'm doing well. How about yourself? GM.
GM, yeah, it is actually GM for me. Yeah, no, I'm doing really well. Doing really well. I got an early start today. Got some things done, and yeah, I'm really excited. So it's a good day.
It is always a great day when you get to wake up. Sorry, but anything about of the topic above generative AI? Anything that you have any questions on or thoughts on or interest in?
Um, Not off the top of my head. However, I mean, I've started to notice that quantum is becoming quite the narrative lately. I can really see that kind of ramping up. I mean, Solomon's got a space on a lady that works for a quantum technology company is coming on, I think, on Friday, which would be Saturday for me. But Crypto Erie is also doing a video series on quantum as well at the moment. So, I mean, that's kind of, there's a connection there, with the same people. But there's definitely a narrative kind of being spun at the moment, and it's exciting. I'm really excited.
Yes, Anastasia. That's going to be speaking on both the space and I think helping her make the videos, which is cool to see. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that it's actually her family's company that is developing not only quantum processors and procedures, but algorithms and trying to help co-author applications and other things that could be used for quantum procedures. Quantum procedures, I like
I'm
that.
Yeah, same. That's a good terminology. I mean, it's kind of scary when you think about it because you've got the automation of things happening at such a exponential rate right now, and AI is just you know r- taking a lot of that productivity and time away from the tedious tasks that we've had to endure up until now. And then if you throw quantum on top of that as well, man, I mean, it's just like holy crap! Like it just speeds up things to a rate and a level that is just unparalleled to anything that we've ever experienced. And it's as scary as it is exciting. And I mean, I just come out of Stewie Space, and Dark Horse was talking a little bit about some companies that are folding at the moment, and jobs that are kind of disappearing. And I mean, I feel a lot of energy around at the moment, and it's a massive shift basically. And it's, yeah, like I said, as scary as it is exciting, and just kind of keen to see where it's all going to go.
I couldn't agree more. Sorry, I'm still trying to look for the last two videos. Twitter, I don't know. Lately, I have been posting things, but it doesn't um, post it to the media for some reason on the profile. What do you know what industry specific that they were speaking about? That there was less jobs of a sector in at the moment because I do know there's a lot of economic difficulties at the moment, but um, these tooling sets I really don't think will remove a lot of jobs from individuals. I think it's more automation and robotics, and we've seen that over the course of the last decade, 15 years, which has really replaced a lot of the jobs that are at least existing at this moment. And that typically opens up new industry and new inventions and industries themselves that get developed from. But um, yeah, I think that's going to be really the larger push to why the majority of the labor jobs physically get removed today, and the smart tooling sets I think is it's what's going to really help enable people who lose those jobs to take that factor of time and be able to multiply it into some sort of innovative change in society.
100%. No, I definitely agree with you, and there's definitely going to be a reskilling of employment, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges is trying to get these people that don't understand how this technology works to trying to understand how it works. But to your question, Stewie didn't say specifically what industry, but it sounded like kind of warehouse, maybe logistics, from what he was kind of describing. which is not surprising at all because they're definitely automating a lot of that industry.
Yeah, and it just makes sense too. Actually, we were having a conversation earlier with somebody who was an Amazon driver, and he was like, "I don't really see package delivery or packaged like drivers really getting you know losing their jobs in the next 5 to 10 years." And I was like, "Oh, for me, my personally I think that driving delivery jobs, in particular trucking, it's going to be one of the earlier positions that's going to be lost to automation, as we already see I should say almost already fully autonomous vehicles. We also had the first FAA approved flying vehicle this year, right? And we see that in a couple different jurisdictions across the international field, as there's already a commercial company that's legally doing it in some parts of China. And there's also one particular company that I know that I like, that's called Lilith in the United States, that's designing their own flying vehicles as well. Forgot the
That's
company that
awesome.
got FFA approved. Let me double check it right now.
Yeah, I know Uber would piloting, pun intended, what was it? The flying helicopters from rooftop to rooftop throughout Melbourne. I know they were kind of looking at doing that. I don't know how far they've come along with that. I was up there the other day and I didn't see any. So it's a really cool way of getting around though. I mean, if you're in one building and you want to go to another, and why go all the way down to the bottom and navigate your way through the streets if you can just get on a helicopter and whip over to the other, top of another building? I reckon it's really cool.
Aleph was the company that got FAA approved for the flying vehicle in the United States. And yeah, it's exactly it. Why even own a vehicle if it's as easy as calling a flying vehicle that's going to show up in 5 to 10 minutes? It's going to be able to bring you anywhere in a 60-mile radius, and that you could be there in 15 to 20 minutes, even faster than you could get in a vehicle today if you were driving in not only city but rural areas, yeah, especially rural areas. But that's I think a really interesting factor, that it'll actually speed up transportation between objective A and objective B. I got one more video I'm looking for the from the DC FinTech weekend. I will kind of go on my train of thought of where I was gonna take it all. But please feel free, Dazzling, if you want to keep speaking about anything. Have you checked out the videos that I posted up top? Did you get a chance to see the DC FinTech or the two World Economic Forum videos?
No, I haven't seen the other ones that you posted, but I have seen. I did watch the generative AI one when it was live the other week or the other day, I believe. Is it the same one?
Yep, yeah, that's one of the videos I'm going to post on. So, so that one they spoke about more so um, the different types of like the frontier of the cool different things that are going to be innovative that you can do with it, and how they think that should be used, and the kind of little thoughts behind the tooling sets that already exist. And then the other one was really more focused on governance, regulation, um, the not I should say less domain specific, more kind of like overall, where the one that we watched was more like domain specific, like industry specific, talking about different things of particular use cases for it. I'm gonna touch on both though. Actually, the
Well,
fintech video that I am having difficult finding right now.
yeah, I've noticed a lot of conversations around the ethics of AI, and um, I mean, someone was kind of thinking about the selection process of getting a job, and basically getting an AI to run through resumes. and you don't want to be biased in any way, shape, or form to anyone in particular for any reason or whatnot. You still want to make it a fair playing ground, and it just depends on how the data is fed. And I think Death just rugged it. um, but yeah, I mean, you got to be really careful about how you apply AI to these systems so that it is a fair, distributed system for everybody.
If you want, if you would like to repeat the last part, sorry about that.
No, no, it's okay. Yeah, there's just a lot of conversation around um, how getting AI to basically look at resumes when people are applying for jobs, and how you don't want to be biased against that process. But yeah, it's a good conversation to kind of have, because you want to make sure that it's a fair selection process for everybody involved.
Yep, exactly. One of the specific domain types and and thoughts behind how do you set parameters behind how do you use this specific tool in this specific domain type. Yeah, that one of the examples I'm gonna definitely speak on in a moment. But Chris, man, welcome up. Glad you're here in the space. And I just want to say, anybody else in the space, if you guys want to come up and speak with us or have any questions, please feel free to hit the bubble at the bottom right.
Evening, how you doing?
Well today, man. I'm tired, but glad to be here. Glad I'm loving this conversation already, and I'm going to start digging deep into the different model types and use cases in a moment. But I'm glad you're here.
Well, I'm doing good. I'm having a very busy week. But you know what? I was lying in bed last night having random thoughts as I usually do, and I was thinking about something that I saw in a TV show about space, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't understand this, and I thought I know exactly who I'm going to ask. So I've been waiting for a chance to jump up and ask you this question, because if anyone's going to know, I'm sure you're going to know the answer. It's sort of space related. Is that all right?
Let's do it.
Right. Okay. I'm going to do my best to not butcher this now. Right. So I'm watching this TV show called oh gosh, oh bugger, what's it called? Um, oh, I've balled it up already. For All Mankind, right? For All Mankind, it's an Apple TV show, and it's actually I really enjoy it. It's the idea is it's like what would have happened if the Russians had landed on the moon first, and then a slightly different twist on the way everything in the world pans out. Anyway, bottom line, technology, the space race never ends, and the race for that continues to drive technology, and everything just happens a lot faster. Anyway, we're on like season 4 or something now, and fast forward, and now we're on Mars, and and so basically they're trying to um, extract some minerals from this asteroid, right? So there's got this asteroid going at God knows what speed, however many thousands of miles an hour it's going or whatever. And they catch up to it, and they want to try and basically they're going to try and grab it and move it to Mars, right? And then get it stationary so they can mine it. Well, that's the general plot, right? But I was wondering, because I hope I'm not going to do a spoiler for someone that wants to watch it now, but basically, if you've got like this in this instance, there's a spaceship going, and I have no idea how fast it's going, but let's say you got a spaceship going 1,000 miles an hour, right? And you're sort of standing on it and you're holding on to it, right? Then technically you're on this spaceship and you're also going 1,000 miles an hour, right? And then let's say you're holding, I don't know, an apple, right? That apple is now also traveling with you and the spaceship at 1,000 miles an hour. Now, you let go of the apple, right? And suddenly the apple starts to float away, right? If you did that, like, you know, in a car, going 100 miles an hour, that apple would be like literally gone from vision within like seconds. But in space, it's like that apple just, or at least the way the TV show presents it, that apple just slowly drifts away. And it's like if you was quick, you'd be able to reach out and grab it. But in real life, that wouldn't be possible, right? So I was wondering how on earth, right, does that apple move so slow as it sort of like in the case of the TV show, I think it was a person that sort of like slipped and then sort of like slowly floated away and doing the scream and stuff. But why is it that like that thing that just is no longer connected to that ship suddenly doesn't just stop moving? Can you answer that?
Yeah, so it all comes down to relativity. And so here on Earth, we have a density from not only the gravity, right, but all of the particles that are being held together inside of our atmosphere from gravity. And so, you know, it's relative to the speed of the object based on, right, the velocity of its movement. And, when you're in this uh, outer space scenario, there's not a lot of particles to kind of stop you from moving, right? Uh, so it's, kind of just drifts off as it seems to drift off, yet it's still moving very relative to the speed of what you were moving at beforehand of letting go of the apple.
So you're saying that Apple technically is still moving at the same speed as the ship,
Very relative to it, yes.
which is why it would just slowly float away.
It seemingly would float away. That's just based on your perspective of the relativity to you and the apple as the other object. But say to somebody who might be observing this from a far distance away, the apple may be moving at such a tremendous speed it's actually very hard to calculate it.
Right.
Uh,
It looks good on the TV show, though, to be fair, especially when they're screaming as they're floating away.
they do great jobs with it. Yeah, that's one of those things that are like tremendously could be scary. This floating away object, because it's like this thought that you would just float away at the same speed as you were moving momentum wise, and uh, you kind of just would drift forever, and it's like hard to tell the relative what is up, what is down, essentially.
But I mean, technically, if you were quick enough, you'd be able to just reach out and grab the apple. I mean, it's not suddenly going to end up being like 10,000 miles away because you let go of it 10 seconds ago, right? That's essentially what you're saying is that the distance is relative. That right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, you'd still be moving at a relative speed. You're not going to just uh,
The apple just doesn't come to a standstill and the ship carries on.
not unless there was some sort of like density of substance in outer space in the form of molecules, right? Like subatomic atoms that are bouncing against each other. In most thoughts, if you were to fly off of a spaceship, the thought is you would probably like, yeah, never stop until you maybe got sucked into a black hole or hit by a star eventually, whatever happened to your corpse.
It's a nice thought to take to bed tonight to think about. Well,
Welcome up,
you
Rose.
know what?
Okay.
I'm glad that my confidence in getting an answer was well placed. Thank you very much.
No,
I'll
thank
see.
you. I enjoyed the question. It also brought a thought up to my head. Was like it's like this thought of relativity, how we see ourselves moving around the sun on this earth, right? How we're stuck in this kind of like well of a gravitational hold from the sun being so massful, or have so much mass. I should say massful. It's not a word, but you know. When we think about like, well, could we just like put rockets on our Earth and kind of like just blast away from the sun, and we would need rockets that could propel us over 100,000 miles faster than what we are moving relatively at this moment, being pulled by the sun, to counteract the the pull that our sun has on us, and so it's like all kind of like relative to right, our speed of the amount of velocity of thrust we need. It's relative to how fast we're actually locked in place in this velocity of movement with the sun.
So in this show where they were talking about basically getting this asteroid that's heading in this direction, and then they will like shoot cables at it, and they anchored it to the ship, and presumably then they were going to sort of like fire the engines and try and drag it in a different position, a different location. So is that feasible? Then you just need to have a pretty powerful ship, right?
Yeah, they're already starting trying to do it, man.
No.
Yeah, there's definitely concepts out there. That was one of the thoughts, like with the mission with Banu, right? Like really, and now they've launched the satellite to go check out 17 Psyche. Just trying to look at all these different asteroids and large orbital debris around us and see if it's worth trying to bring back in some capacity, at least bring it closer to us, where we could mine from it or utilize it for some sort of material.
Cool. Have you ever seen the show, by the way?
No, I haven't, but I definitely am going to check it out.
Well, spoiler alert! I've just told you what happens in season 4, but it's definitely worth a watch. I thought it was really really cool, uh, and really cleverly done, because generally things work on a timeline that's sort of what you'd expect, but they make really subtle differences as it goes along, and it's just really cool. Definitely think you'll get a kick out of watching it.
It sounds fun, and like my things that I enjoy watching. Rose, though, welcome up. You haven't gotten a chance to speak yet, and then Dazzling. I know you're getting tired there already. I'm sorry, man.
Hey guys, yeah, hello Death Range, I hope you're well. And just a few questions. So obviously I learned what AI was on, I think 2 weeks ago. Models, I'm just going to go with that's about supermodels, materials, obviously materials. Obviously we know what quantum is, but what is neutral nets, please? I don't know what that's about. I don't know if you've already, well, if you're going to go into the coverage of that. And hello to Chris and Daz and Zara and Vet and the Quack and a few in the audience as well. I hope everybody's well.
Thank you for coming up, Rose. And I'm sorry, I missed what the question was there, though.
Oh, sorry. The neural nets, the hash in the top there. I'm
Oh,
not
neural.
sure what neural
Oh,
nets.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, no,
whatever that
I
is.
just no. You
Same
said it.
with
You said it right. I just
chat
had to insert it.
GPT in it.
Yes, I'm definitely going to touch on it in the next few minutes, and it's where I was going to go to from a material aspect of the way that these the models of that we're using on our phones or whatever it may be, your large language models, your video models, whatever application it would be, the actual hardware behind it and how it operates. Um, is it okay if we let Dazzling and Simple One speak first, and then I'll jump into it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No rush. No rush.
Cool. Thank you for coming up. And Dazzling, man, go ahead.
I was going to point out that I thought it was quite funny, Chris, that when you asked the question of what you described, you asked the question, how on earth does that happen? But the funny thing is, it wasn't happening on Earth, which I thought was quite funny. But yeah, I mean, it's I have seen the show quite a few times, and I keep thinking I've really got to watch that. So you've definitely piqued my interest, and I'm going to jump on it. And I love when there's a lot of seasons as well. That's really cool. And so it's interesting though, because Death, I was watching a docu the other day on basically the space race, and obviously with this show, it kind of goes down the path of had the Russians, gotten to the moon first, all this kind of stuff. But this doc I was watching was factual on how the Americans and the Soviets were basically, at it, trying to get out there and sending probes out and then people and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure you know the history of all that anyway. But it was like this massive rush and competition between each other to see who could do what first, right? And so I kind of found that, we got to a point of, landing on the moon, but then we just stopped. And I'm wondering why we stopped that massive competition between other countries to try and get out there, right? And then I started thinking, well, we're still getting out there and we're still doing things, but it seems like that competitive nature towards it has died down, and it kind of makes me, kind of raises an eyebrow. It's like, well, why did they stop that competitive aspect of it? And surely they didn't. I don't know. What is that easy to answer, or?
Sorry. What was the question in that?
So why do we slow down on that competitive nature towards getting out to space, right? Because it just seemed like, you know, the Soviets would, throw, some things into outer space successfully, and then they were like, hey, we're ahead of the US, and then, I was quite surprised to find out that the Soviets had gotten, some objects over to Mars 3 times, unsuccessfully, of course, but still, nevertheless, they got there first. But they did focus their attention on Venus because they had some successful missions over there. But it wasn't until the US had gotten to the moon that it was like, okay, we've done this now. So, but I'm just wondering why that competitive nature has kind of slowed down since the moon landing.
Well, it's a question if the moon landing really even actually happened, right? And or
Oh,
was
I just wanted to say that.
Better be.
Oh, come on now.
But it could have been said that political wise, it could have been done to make Russia feel like they needed to spend a whole bunch of money on the space race, and they did dump a ton of money into going to outer space. But there are a lot of advancements that aren't spoken about often. Where China has the only Land Rover that has a satellite dish on it that exists on the dark side of the moon. Now, the aperture of the satellite is like 8 inches, so very small, right? Like, can't really do much with it, but it's still like something that they have that nobody else technically has done really yet. But there's a lot and the United States has quite a lot of satellites we've launched from to far distances, and planned a couple cool missions in the near future too. But there's definitely there's a lot of different stuff in different countries, and depending on if it's private or public, you might not even hear about whatever was done.
Yeah, that's really interesting because one of the things they kind of touched on was that the discovery of the ice caps on Mars was basically overshadowed by the moon landing, and I mean that was a huge discovery. So it kind of makes me think about what other things they're not letting us know about. But I have spoken a lot, so I'm just gonna land my plane there for a little bit and let Simple go.
Yes, and the methane lakes on Titan. I mean, there's methane signatures and oxygen signatures, which you don't get the two combined in an atmosphere unless there's some sort of organic life. So, there's the thought of that. Maybe it's very minute in the form of bacteria, but possible organic life. Simple though, welcome. First time to the space. First time up, at least that I've seen you. But welcome, and please feel free to jump in.
So we all know that the Nazis inhabit the dark side of the moon, but that's just stuff, and everybody here knows that it was the Tartarians that got there first. But I wanted to reference the apple, right? So if you're on a train, and we'll make it a monorail, right? Use your imagination, and it's perfect. There's no vibrations, right? You put sound deadeners inside of it so you can't hear the engine, and you cover up all the windows so you're just in a box. Basically, you would have no way of knowing that you were moving at 200 miles per hour. And this is on Earth's surface. So if you were to throw up an apple inside of that car, everything in that car, including the air, is moving at a relative speed of 200 miles per hour. And so the apple would go up as normal, and the only force that would act upon it is gravity pulling it back down, just like if you were standing still on Earth.
Thanks for that. So it's pretty much what you're saying is very similar to what Death was saying then, correct?
right? There's like a video of a guy jumping on a trampoline on the back of a moving truck as well, right? And so even in the open air, right, he's moving at the same speed as the truck, even with the forces of air acting against him. When you're moving in your car, it's the same way, but you know you're moving, right? We're taking away all senses of being able to move while you're on Earth, and everything moving relative to you. You still wouldn't have that drift, you know, like there's nothing acting on it except for gravity. So yeah, further extending the concept that Death was saying.
I love these spaces, man.
I do as well. And I love them because I love you guys, because it wouldn't be what it was if it wasn't for everyone that came here. And so, tearing us back over to generative AI and touching on neural nets, Rose, right? So, you know, when we have this thought of what a generative AI is, right? All of these different model types of this data set that is able to be fed into this algorithm that then takes it and is able to produce something in the domain of the registry of the specific industry of the data sets it's taking, and is able to create actions upon which we would think to be very human-like, right? Or in the sense of a digital change that is occurring from a data set that was previously fed this data, and it's able to reciprocate some sort of actionable state from that said data. Now, the different types of material-based substances and the way that they were formulated that's been used for the course of the last 15 years or so, or conventionally called CNNs, or conventional neural networks. And so where they were very large, hundreds of thousands of acres long warehouses that would hose oh, man, my words today, that would hold various machinery in the forms of CPUs and hardware that could generate output. And depending on the way that the setup was between the communication of the hardware, could integrate very similar patterns into the creation of the way that the data was processed and then procedurally executed, similar to how the human brain works and how we kind of take in information, use this information in little bits, and kind of put it all together and then create an outcome from doing so. Today, and one particular company, Synapsys, that pops into my head, the way that they have built their 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter synthetic transistor silicon-based microchips that are modularly, that fire off electromagnetic signals inside of this particular circuitry of these very small chips that are similar to the way that the neurons fire off in the brain and search out these little axons that then attach to other neurons that then make synaptic connections in our brain. And so the architecture of the way that the communication of these systems have grown went from needing large warehouses of all of this different hardware that can communicate with each other, to very small modular chips that can do the same procedural actions of the way that the electromagnetic signals are flowing. And with this, them being modular, can increase the computational ability to have, say, a large language model and all of this different tooling sets that we are using at much more comparable levels that are, understandably, of how the human brain operates. And so neural net is kind of this term where, we're coining the back end of the communication of the electromagnetic frequencies in which that is making up the large language model or the generative AI model that is being used. And I know that was a lot of information, so ask anything you would like about it, Rose.
Sorry, Mr. Death Ranger. So these chips then, so are they used in software or adult, like in humans? Like, where are these chips used? Sorry, I don't know if I've missed that because I've just been cooking. Where are the chips used that you're talking of?
Well, they're typically used in large warehouse facilities that you would have a model type built that is utilizing that hardware set. You can also look up. Actually, let me grab Sierra. I know she's not here today, but she made a really cool diagram. That's awesome. Um, you could also look up neuromorphic chip designs, which is kind of like the design conceptuality that's been termed behind the description of the intent, where the the neurology, right? The signals that are being shot through the neurons in the brain and communicating in this electromagnetic frequency has been recreated into these modularly built chipsets that can then be put together and create much more efficient large warehouse data sets than were previously used. And one day I think that all of these types of designs, right, because they're like a thing like a neuromorphic chipset, right, and a neural net, which a neural net refers to a large complete set of these different types of hardware that's been connected together. It will probably be in like our everyday devices very soon. It's definitely not there yet. Obviously, it's more newer concepts, higher end of the purchase line for sure of what the chips are able to do. But we're definitely seeing it. Actually, as a great example, Apple, they've recently released a computational system, their Mac, and the base sets for the premium models, even the regular models, they're quite computationally heavy. I mean, they can produce a ton of CPU power, and we're kind of seeing
You
this
speak
slow.
you speak about the AI, the ARM processors.
Yeah, the M3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much CPU power in these things. They're monsters, and it's kind of like now. But here's like the other example is they're expensive, right? And so it's like it's still really expensive to be able to afford this hardware. But these new designs that are being integrated into the open commercial market, really, I see definitely being able to be integrated into the everyday software and devices very soon.
No, definitely, Joe. Not only they are more expensive, but the cycles for them are now much tighter. So it's every year a new processor. You know what I mean? Previously, like you had some gap between generations. Now it's every year.
That's it. And as we see Moore's, this is a great example of Moore's law. As we see Moore's law, and I'll get into maybe the Nobel Prize that was just awarded to the three physicists that discovered the attosecond timing to be able to take an aperture picture of a electron moving inside of an atom. Um, but with like the thought that computation is just going to just increase, but this flywheel effect is just going to move faster and faster and faster and evolve and faster. It's exactly it. And we're at this like mid stage where publicly we have chip designs that transmit signals very similar to the neurons in the brain, but in a silicon based format. And it's like, how do we take this to the next level where you know from your neurons in the cerebral cortex and your visual cortex, there's a lot of chemical substance, DMT, playing a huge role in when you're picking up these photons from the outside world and visually comprehending them, and the neurons in the brain. And so it's like, well, maybe we design different neuromorphic chip designs where one fires off like the neurons on the reptile part of your brain, and the other one fires like the neurons in your gut, and then one fires off like the neurons in your visual cortex. I think we start to get to silicon based execution of intelligence very similar to how we look at an identity of us as a human. But neural nets is kind of like that first digital step to that, in my opinion. And Dazzling, you've had your hand up for a while, man. Please go ahead.
So apparently, Apple were utilizing their M2 Ultra chips for themselves for their own internal machine learning capabilities. I know that they're trying to stay away from the terminology of artificial intelligence. I think they're just sticking with machine learning. Maybe that's a regulatory thing that they're trying to get around. But there was something about the M2 Ultra architecture specifically that made it very useful for that. And so, because they'd utilized them in house, they basically were like, oh, crap, we've run out of M2 Ultra chips, so we need to push the M3s out, and I believe that's why they had been released a lot sooner. I could be wrong there, but definitely, yeah, it was kind of cool to see them be released so quickly. But my question was, so brain? What's the human brain's computing power equivalent to? Is it equivalent to?
So you can typically process information, and I don't know how much bits it's relative to, but you process about 1/1 millionth of a second. You're able to process information, and
I
that's
mean,
relative to a computer that can process it 1/1 billionth of a second, I think.
Twitter is telling us daily, dazzling, that not everybody has the same processing power. So there are fluctuations in production.
That's for sure. But I think like viewing wise, like I guess like if what you're visually comprehending, I think you can take in information at like 1/1 millionth of a second. I don't know where I've seen that before, but it was relative in example to computers that were able to move and process information 1/1 billionth of a second. Sorry, I put my phone down there for a moment. Welcome to the space, Lambo. Feel free
Hey,
to
how's
jump
it
in.
going, man? I love the topic of neuro technology. I'm going to share a link with you and then we can talk about it, but I want you to check this out. And there's also a GitHub to integrate this device into Unity, right? So I've been wanting to play around with it. Just check it out and then just tell me what you think about it. I'm going to send you the links here in a second.
Cool. And welcome up, NY. Glad you're here.
Hey, Death. Sorry, it's a little loud right now. I'm trying to get to a quiet spot.
Nope, you're fine, man. But while you do that, I'll jump into another thought on why neuromorphic chip designs will be so powerful, in my opinion, very soon. And so, going to the ability to use a neuromorphic chip design in something like a BCI, which is a brain control interface, or you could also think of like a Neuralink or brain chip, brain link. They have a different ones depending on if you're in China or Russia, or there's a lot of different entities that are trying to achieve the same thing at the moment. And so, having a chip, obviously in this silicon-based format, though, that is able to reciprocate and communicate in the signals very similar to the brain, makes it exponentially more capable for it to communicate with the signals inside of your brain, and so be able to distribute, these particular electromagnetic frequencies that could hit your neurons, that then spread through those axons that the neurons shoot out to other neurons, and you could think of like some sort of ability to allocate memory to some sort of fact that you didn't know, right? Flying like a helicopter, like they kind of had did in the Matrix, where she was, Trinity was able to download the information and know how to fly a helicopter very quickly. And so, I think that's really cool long-term capabilities. Short-term capabilities, I think for medical needs, this is where it's going to probably take off first, right? Someone who's been neurologically damaged and needs help with some sort of movement of their body that's been impaired, or losing limbs, where you might have, say, you're lost an arm or a leg, and you can put a robotic unit on that could then communicate it with a neuromorphic chip design of a BCI inside of your head, and so you could feel like you have a leg and you can move your leg like you would be able to with the same relative thought procedure like we do kind of just walking normally today, as we all kind of you never really think about it. Sometimes we take things for granted, and it's interesting to think that we could have technology that would displace that loss and give the ability to have that movement that one may have lost and took for granted prior to that.
Yeah, called phantom limb. When you lose that limb and you feel as if it's still there, it's a phantom. My girlfriend, she's actually a neurologist, technologist. That's what she's been doing it for 20 years. And I've taken a look at her machines that she uses to hook up patients. And she does the analytic reports for the doctors, and breaks it down. And they do it for like brain dead or seizures and things of that nature. I sent you the links, and what that is actually a headset that you can put on, and it'll read the brain waves. And it has a mobile application. But what I really like about that company, because there's a lot of companies out there that have these machines, but they have a really good developer tool and GitHub where you can build on it, right? Allowing people to build applications and using, these waves and interpreting them and then putting it into an application, which is really cool. I find it really fascinating. I think you will too.
Oh yeah, I love these type of products. This EEG reader for and you can. Oh, this is so cool. And you can write individual. You can write and submit your own code. And is all of the code itself open source? So you can also take it and make your own GitHub repository.
Yeah, man, check it out. I sent you the links.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I'm definitely going to take a look at that. And these are like the innovative things that I love to hear, because these are, taking these real world applications for these model sets and tool sets that we're all talking about here, and boom, you have a real world example of how it could be used right now. And yeah, definitely thank you for bringing that up. And why are you in a better space now, man? If you want to jump in, please feel free to.
Yeah, it got quiet. No, I'm interested in continuing the conversation on BCIs and I guess their first round of implementation, because I also agree it's going to be in like the healthcare area, dealing with handicap issues or like emergency procedures. But also, I kind of see it taking place in like the testing realm, where you might have a firefighter, right, that wants to go into like into a certain condition that is dangerous for humans, but you want to be able to have a agent do it, but it be controlled by an actual like firefighter. So I see that kind of Neuralink connecting to the firefighter, and then that connection connecting to some type of robot or something that'll be able to withstand certain controls from the person. I see that also being an implementation, because they already kind of do it with games where you could put certain sensors on your body and then you're jumping into the game. So if you kind of mix all of these together, there's a strong possibility.
Yeah, I think at first it definitely makes sense, especially if it's like crane operators and things like that, right? Things that could be highly dangerous if, say, there wasn't an educated professional behind it. But I think over time, we'll definitely be able to replace the labor or the actual human aspect of at least being needing to be behind it long term, maybe in the next 10 years or so. And one of the things that popped in my head, though, actually, Lambo, now that you um, brought that the EEG wireless headset and that GitHub to my attention, or my thoughts, I saw the other day there was a video of the first doctorless doctor's office. So it was like funny, right? But no, it was the first humanless doctor's office, where you're going to able to walk in and probably not like your emergency services where you would need surgical needs, right? But your basics, you go in for your checkup, your blood test, it takes your EEG, it takes your heart rate, all of the typical things that everyone would walk into, your weight, right? How you're feeling, what have you been eating, right? All of these things that could actually be tested and taken and then given you some sort of, you're doing well, or, you should probably change this. And I think that's like really interesting to me, especially when you think about you being able to like wear a headset that could then communicate information to that doctor's office. Say you had an event or something like that, and so it's like all this interconnectedness that's in the precipice of occurring with information that's able to be gathered and actionably looked on and said, like, what can we do with this information? This is valuable. Dazzling, go ahead, man.
I saw that exact same video and I was like, wow, that's really cool. But yeah, like you just said then, chucking a headset on or something at home, or even having something, because I know you can do consultations over the, like a Zoom call and stuff like that. But obviously, you need they're going to need something to read from you to be able to, diagnose or give advice and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, this is where the kind of wearables come into to play and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's just very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, and caveat, right, to the brain control interfaces and these different types of neurological communication devices. They don't all have to be invasive, and they won't be invasive, right? I think really the medical system is going to be where the necessity to have invasive procedures done, because it's going to be such um, a strong electrical connection that needs to develop between the device and whatever has been damaged and needs to be repaired inside of the body. And so that makes a lot of sense to me from a medical standpoint. You can't have these catheter nodes that aren't able to distribute the signal correctly to help you rehabilitate and fix whatever function that was damaged inside of your body. However, if it's like say I want to communicate to Dazzling without having to speak, I could see this being like an innovative device that gets built that's non-invasive, something I could just put on like a headset, or maybe like even like just like this earpiece, Lambo, like you kind of sent me, that
Well,
allows
just
me
don't
to.
talk to Dazzling.
Yeah,
Yeah, get out of my head.
there are some hurdles with this. So about 7 or 8 years ago, I was friends with a guy. He was from Poland and he was an American citizen. He was a developer, and he was creating stuff for Siemens Healthcare. And he also built a facial recognition program to be used in Africa for the lions. So instead of having to tag them, they could actually use the face recognition to know which lion and where it was seen and found and stuff. So it's a brilliant guy, right? He tried to do this kind of technology and implement it into radiology and using past x-rays, because when they do an x-ray they have to send it to a third party radiologist, and the third party says, okay, this is what it is, and it goes back to the doctor. And so it's like an audit, and then the doctor says, okay, that's what it is, this is what kind of break it is, right? So he was trying to eliminate the third party by having an AI match it up with other records of broken bones that are similar, right? Kind of like the facial recognition or whatnot, right? But the problem was HIPAA regulations. They couldn't get past the HIPAA regulations and opening those files and those records to the public. So that was the big hurdle. But he had it all developed out and working and everything, man. But he couldn't get past that, which it would have revolutionized things, man. Because that same implication process could be used in other medical stuff, right? To diagnose, have a computer diagnose different things that could be wrong. But the HIPAA regulations is always going to be that obstacle. Well, I see that as an obstacle, maybe for now, but maybe in the future it'll change. But
It definitely is. It adds a large cost to the business model, right? And a whole bunch of regulatory questions.
yeah, they're big into privacy when it comes to healthcare. You take like a whole year and a half on just HIPAA regulations on what you can tell a patient, what you can't tell a patient. Like if you're a nurse and you're not a doctor, you tell them that they could possibly have this, and they turn around and go to the doctor, you could get sued for that and lose your license completely. um, Even like if somebody's over there and they're having a cardiac arrest, they say don't go over there and perform the Heimlich, for don't sometimes it's best not to put your hands on them because you're going to take on the liability of that and you could lose your license. It's crazy. I mean, there's just so much regulations and so many things that you have to be careful of. um yeah, it's just in healthcare it's like that.
Yeah, you're very right. It's like the incentive. It does come down to somewhat like the incentive behind the society and the way that we interact with each other. And I do agree. It is actually a very interesting thing to think about because technically, when somebody needs to be resuscitated, they're legally already dead. However, if you save them and then also at the same time of saving them harm them, then yes, you're like liable for that. It's baffling to me. It's always been baffling to me, but. Uh, yeah, you're right.
I've had doctors sit there and say, "What about if somebody is going into cardiac arrest? Are you going to perform it?" He said, "No, I'll have one of the nurses do it because he doesn't want to risk his license."
Yeah, and that's the reality behind it. He'd rather have the institution be liable rather than himself be liable. That's yeah. You're taking us back though to these generative AI models, and so some of the thoughts you brought up, facial recognition, I thought was a really interesting one. It was also something that was mentioned in these governance conversations that I posted above from the World Economic Conference that just occurred. You
It's
know,
gotten so good now, man. They can identify, like at Walmart, if you have a face mask on and you've been in there before, they'll know who you are, even with the face mask on. It's gotten crazy um, how advanced the facial recognition has gotten.
yeah, I mean, some of these cameras can tell your temperature at a 20-meter distance or whatever it is before you even enter the place. Um, and it's not the notion that the face recognition though is right, because I think pluses and minuses, right? For something like if you have a dangerous criminal running around, well, like you might want to know he's in Walmart because he stabbed three people last week and he's on the run still, right? That's like all right, that really comes into place where that could have saved people's lives. At the same time, they used an example like how it happens in China, where from this governance perspective of if you do something wrong, that the system is able to communicate that you're on this blacklist so quickly. From a facial recognition standpoint, it's such a detriment because you almost can get trapped. And there was this one guy, an example, who got put on the blacklist. He was trapped. He couldn't take a train. He couldn't get home. He didn't. He just ended up becoming homeless because he couldn't get anywhere. He was stuck inside of a city or something like that. And you know, it's an interesting position of where we're at this moment. Um,
Basically, profiling people. Like it's profiling people based on their actions. And I mean, I think everybody should watch Snowden if they haven't seen that movie. I mean, it goes into detail about how they use that kind of technology for the wrong reasons, getting politicians that have relatives here in America and then using them for basically ransom to get their way. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff that they talk about. But I think everybody should watch that movie if they haven't seen it.
Welcome up, Meta. Yeah, and I agree. I agree. It's you know, this though goes into this thought of like governance and how we as individuals and as a society, as a collective, look at this and say we want to allow these capabilities and we don't want to allow these capabilities, and we kind of set up this distribution stream of agreements between the parties that are going to have the 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 models running, the hardware running, right? The cameras running for the in this instance, right? This visual pickup. I really like though that we're seeing from an international standpoint, the conversations are really starting to pick up. They're really starting to get heavy, and they're starting to talk about the differences between how things are used and how things should be used. it's just it's a great place that I see us going with it. And I love the information you brought to the space too, Lambo, today, because it really added into it, and it was also touched on two different concepts that I think are important that are being spoken about so far.
Oh yeah, man, we can talk about it. I have a friend, Elise. She worked for John McAfee, and during the whole Snowden whistleblowing thing, her and a guy from Canada, I'm not going to say his name, but they created the Ethical Forum of Data Privacy, and basically to protect people and their privacy. Um, but yeah, it's definitely gone a long way. And if you've been around and you've seen it, you've seen how it's evolved. It's pretty crazy at the speed that it's going at now. I'm kind of curious what Neuralink is doing with Elon Musk. You don't really hear too much about it, but I'm sure he's probably done a lot of breakthroughs that we don't really hear about.
Yeah, I mean, they've recently got approved for human trials, so not to say that we know if it's occurred not or not yet, but it's definitely their next step. And there are a few companies like the Brain Chip and the BCI. They've done a few seminars at local military bases that the stuff is already being integrated into military equipment and public equipment. Dazzling, go ahead, man, jump in. And Hardlight, welcome up. You can jump in if you would like after Dazzling.
Um, well, I've said it before. I don't know if anyone else knows, but yeah, 5 years ago we lost Dad to motor neurons disease, and yeah, that was horrible to watch him go down that go down with that. But he got me into technology, back in the early '90s, and we used to tinker around with the computers, and we're always kind of been at the forefront of technological innovation, since then. And I know he would have been really excited about the BCI capabilities, especially with the situation he found himself in. But just a quick question: who's keen? Anyone going to sign up for it? I probably wouldn't unless I had to if I was in that situation. But yeah, anyone else keen?
No, I'm more like a Gen 7 guy. Like and just like you said, right? Like if I had to, if it was like I lost a leg and I had a robotic leg that had the capability of interacting with the chip and through an application, I'd be like, let's do it. Um, but yeah, I'm more of like a let a couple gens go by, and then definitely I'd love to check it out. Hard light, go ahead, man, and then Meta.
Yeah, I just want to say, to me, the main thing that we all need to be concerned about is our identities, and keeping that information intellectual property is a better way to think about yourself. Like, you are the value. You are the walking, living, breathing, thinking, thank God, thinking value to this planet. And there's a huge war that I don't hear enough of our side, the human side, over our identity. And I think if we really all get together and say, yeah, I want to be myself and no one else, and I want to have complete 100% control over that information, we're all going to be like happier people in a freer world. That, and so AI, all of it, it ties into identity, all of it.
Oh, definitely. I will totally do a little thing on DID and SSI, which is digital identity, obviously in a self-sovereign identity format.
Right on.
So I totally believe in that, and
Yeah,
I'll let
sovereignty. Yeah.
exactly it. Meta, I'll let you go, man, and then I would love to come back on that DID thought there.
Thank you for having me, sir. Appreciate it. Everybody up here, except for Dazzling. I just wanted to say, like, just what the gentleman was saying about, like, what you guys were saying like, about having like limbs and stuff. Like, you don't know, you don't want to accept until you lost the limb or something's wrong with you, and this kind of technology could actually help you improve your life. I could say, no, I'm never gonna do, but if something were to happen to me, God forbid, I'll be like, yeah, put me on that, get me on that thing. But another question that popped up when the gentleman was speaking, Harlight, is if I were to get like an arm or whatever it is, like even like a neural link in my brain or whatever it is, like now it's intellectual property, right? Or it's like a trademark device or whatever. Like, does that mean that they have rights to my brain or rights to my limb? You know what I'm saying? Like,
No,
what
no,
is
no,
the
no. But you bring up a great point. No, I think there's all kinds of shades of distinction between who owns what and who's got the patent and the copyright and the sovereignty. But what you're bringing up is cool. What if the guy that needs the limb says, "Yeah, you can give me a limb if I get all the royalties on all the advertising, all the shit, because I'm your main dude and I'm doing it for you." And there's like
Man,
a trade-off. Yeah, that'd be cool.
it's like Repo Man. They're
Well,
giving
I don't remember.
organs,
I haven't seen it.
making people sign $1 million contracts, and when they have to repo, they go over there and take the organ from
Oh
you
shit.
and leave you to dead. Oh man, that sounds like a horror story.
It was a great movie though.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying though. The identity, if you have all the right, I don't know, man. Because I got a blind friend upstairs, and I want him to be able to see if he can get implanted and be able to see again. Personally.
you know what it
Yeah.
is, dude? Because I
Yeah.
remember there were stories. I'm sorry to interject.
No, you're fine. Go ahead, man.
I heard a story about like there was somebody who actually was using the technology. Like I think it was I saw on HBO like a documentary like probably like it's been probably 15 years now or something. But the dude had like something installed like around his brain, and he was like he couldn't move nothing, right? But when he had that installed in his head, he was moving the mouse cursor on the computer, and he was able to type just by looking at the screen, and he was able to play a game. But then what happened was they took that tech away from him. So it wasn't his anymore, but
Oh
that's the
shit.
problem. So they could be like,
Yeah.
"This is our copyrighted equipment. We're gonna take this away, or we're out of business. We're gonna confiscate this device." You know what I'm saying?
But
That's what
MetaMan,
I'm
that's our
talking about.
problem right now. Right now, it's our problem too. Like I could be not me, and you could be not you.
I'm not talking about that though.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
but same difference.
I think Meta, what will end up happening will be is actually the company that integrates the piece of device into you will actually more so be indebted to you in the form of updates and any sort of like deliberate and del, uh, deliberation. Oh, forgot the word that I'm trying to say. But any damage that would maybe occur to you from said device that could have been installed inside of you, I think the company and whoever produced that is for sure going to be the ones liable for that. And so, I don't think
Yeah,
really have to worry
If we
about
can
that. That's something
secure
from you.
decentralized identification.
but I just want to say something that remember how like
Ooh, you're rugged, Meta.
party or something. This is art. Come on, man. Like, but Mike Tyson paid for that on his face.
Whoa, it's so crazy. He's not even in speakers, but I still hear him speaking. Oh, right. He was
All
really
I got
rugged.
was something about Mike Tyson's face.
I'm sure he'll come back up. I'll send him the invite. But so, going back to the DID, right? The digital identity, and I really think a self-sovereign format of the way that we hold not only our identity, but our medical records, all of the information that we have that it can exist on the internet can be stored in a single server that through the proof of a hash, in the form of like what we coin it a ZK rollup, right? From a third party entity, you can be able to prove the information that you give access to somebody through the means of a transaction. Medical records, if you want to only let them know your birth date and the things that they need to know to help you, or if you're going to the hospital, or right, you're going to the bar and they only need to know you're over 21. They don't need to know your name. They don't need to know any of their information other than you. They just need to know that barcode scans. They get a cryptographic proof from a third party government identifier that says this person is of age. And so, yeah, I think digital identity plays into this Internet of Value and all of this generative AI and model types that exist when it comes to information trading, I think the privacy needs to be there for sure.
Awesome.
No, thank you for bringing it up. It's something very important. And Dazzling, please go ahead, man.
I raised my hand and met a job, so I felt like I rugged him. Do you think it would be a good idea to have something in place where if you had acted up at a pub, misbehaved or started a brawl or something like that, because of intoxication, that digital ID could then stop you from purchasing more alcohol, or is that probably too far? Would that be a good idea? What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, this is something that could be implemented easily today, right? You could say you're not allowed to drink if you get over this limit. You're not allowed to buy alcohol if you're over this limit. Blow into the stick, right? But then it comes down to like an entity saying, we think you're too drunk, blow into the stick, and somebody saying, no, screw you, I don't want to blow into the stick. So there is definitely a discretionary measure between kind of like, how do you make that. Uh, articulation and like some individual can blow a point, what is it, like a 0.01 or something, point 1 point, yeah, 0.1 I think it is when over the influence to drive, right? And you can have two people who blow the same thing, but one person who's kind of like able to communicate and still right, maybe they drink every day and so it's not that big for them, and another person who's like just drove off of a bridge or something. So I guess there's also that kind of thought behind it.
I think I kind of came at it from more of a behavioural perspective. If you causing trouble at this joint, then it gets marked against your digital ID, and therefore you go to scan it, and it doesn't matter whether it needs your age or anything like that. Any other details, it's relevant because it just goes, hey, you're causing trouble here. You do not get access basically.
Oh,
And
I
if
love
that's
that.
kind of a
Yeah. I,
yeah, yeah.
and I think you're right. You think of a credit score, right? Today, how you're kind of judged when you go to get a loan for something based on like three or four things that you're like, I'm 25, I didn't have enough time to build my credit yet. Like, that's not fair, right? Like, there's a lot of young people who unfortunately fall into that position where it takes them like 15 years before they can even uh, uh, acquire a loan to buy a home just because they didn't qualify for the loan. Not that they really didn't qualify, it's just like these things, right? But like to society, the way that you're looked at, yeah, I really like that, where you have like you could think of it like a point-based system somewhat, where if an individual, and doesn't mean you have to act upon such thing, but you know like you kind of have this notion where people want to be incentivized to have interactions in society where they're meaningful, empathetic, and loving, not I'm going to enter this bar, get really drunk, and start a fight and start trying to hurt people because this is what I want to do tonight. So yeah, I think the incentive behind society also changes a little bit when there's more of a means of the tracking and tracing of your actionable steps, and the actions, the reactions that occur from said steps. MetaMan, please go ahead, jump in, and I think I might close up shortly afterwards.
Okay, let me just go up what you just said, and I'm just thinking about when you're saying that it's like pre not pre-crime, what's it called, pre something else, like you're like, let's say if the device in my brain were to measure the levels of like my aggressiveness or whatever, my anger, like it would be like anger, like it would like send something like this guy's getting angry for what reason, oh no, he's thinking violently or whatever, then like somehow I get punished for thinking this way, or shocked, or like caused to like get tired, send shut down my body, sit down somewhere because I'm getting aggressive at the bar, you know? And that's what I'm just thinking, that could be a danger to society as well. But the key word here is the centralization, where nobody can take control of something like this. But I was saying with the Mike Tyson reference was when Mike Tyson had a tattoo on his face, he was being sued by the person who tattooed that art on his face, even though he paid the person already to have that art done on his face. So the person was saying that it's his artwork, so he had the right to get paid as well for having his artwork shown on the movie. So that's ridiculous. So what I'm saying is let's say if I have an appendage like a robotic arm and I star in a movie, the robotic arm factory tries to sue me or whatever it is. But that's why they cannot like say that, because I think it was something with Bill Gates as well on a document. If they, I think he was doing, he has some patents. So basically, if they were to put these, he's thinking that if he were to put something into you, like even like he basically would own you. That's what I was saying. Like if I was supposed to put like a device that's attached to my brain, so they like all of a sudden get to own me. But I mean, we should make regulations on that. Like if we were to put something like that, they still don't have. Nobody has the right to own you or to still own that device once you paid for it in fully.
Definitely nobody has the right to own anybody else, for sure, Meta. And I think that those things will probably get worked out over time as we see the tools and governance and things like this definitely roll out. But you made an interesting point, like where there's an example where it's kind of like if there's an error or an issue, who do you kind of point the finger to? And I used this example the other day. I'll bring it up again. So recently, the Boston Dynamics Spot Dog, which is used for things like robotics facilities, gas facilities, right? You it walks around with infrared looking for gas leaks, electrical issues, anything that could have been right, rusting pipes. Um, and recently, it had ChatGPT that's been integrated into it, the large language model, to help it process information and then distribute that information in real time. What if OpenAI has some sort of update error and the update gets pushed to the Spot Dog, which is in an electrical facility, that then loses its mind and causes like $1 million worth of damage? Who's liable? The Boston Dynamics, the the OpenAI that pushed the ChatGPT update? It's like the gray area kind of. Is there something in the contract that says the that neither of them are liable if a robotic dog loses their mind, and so the electrical facility has to then rely on insurance? Does their insurance costs go up then because of that? It's like, that's interesting questions that still aren't 100% answered. But Zara, I'm so happy you have your hand up. Please feel free to jump in here, and we'll end up after.
Thanks. I've loved the conversation. I think DIDs are definitely the way forward. And there's so many use cases, especially in the two industries that I work in. But I wanted to ask your opinion on something. So it's to do with quantum. It's not completely off topic, but a couple of weeks ago in my lecture, we was learning about the Bitcoin network and about private and public keys. And my professor said that eventually it's entirely possible that with quantum computing we will be able to figure out the private key from the public key. So, I mean, that kind of blew my mind a little bit. But I guess, do you think quantum is going to be a major threat to blockchain and, cryptographic functions? And is that going to clash at some point?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and we're at this inflection point right now where you saw NIST recently released in the last 2 years, and they're almost publicly finalized and agreed upon internationally of these four different quantum algorithms that could be used. They basically very very much so longer hash algorithms. But the downside with that is a longer hash, right? Longer math, but behind the actual private key, public key pair that exists, means more computation has to occur. If you have the same computational power today, that also means the system is then much slower. So it's like, are you sacrificing then that? What's the point of even having the system then? So we're really at this point where we're really, we're looking at both of the possibilities of how you can kind of get this perfect amount of a hash size with a computational system that's able to produce it in speeds that are obviously higher capacity than we have them today, because we want to increase flow and increase ability for computational processes. The reason for this, and so this is also why, if you've never done a transaction with your wallet, it is somewhat quantum resistant, because if I can't find your public key, which the public key is accessible from when you do a transaction with the blockchain, right? You submit this public key transaction. which then tells the blockchain, gives you authorization and says, okay, we know that you have authorization over these said tokens. We'll facilitate the transfer of these said tokens to a different secret phrase, right? This at least gives you that security that there's no way I can take your public key and then try and backdoor through the public key to your private key, and then from that, obviously take your tokens, or at least I have access to your wallet at that point. So that's also one thing, is like rotating key pairs. So every time you do a transaction, and you can already do this on the Bitcoin ledger and the XRP ledger, right? You can rekey your secret phrase. So every time you do a transaction, you rekey the secret phrase behind that. It's like, for a person to do that, it's quite aggravating. When I see, and this is also another reason where I see the custodial services coming into play, because if you have hashes that are like hundreds, if not thousands of characters long, that also need to be rotated after every transaction, this is what you would pay like a custodian agency for. I mean, what are the point of banks if they're not able to have these application settings and nice UIs that'll make it so the everyday user is able to, or even at least commercial users are able to do this without having to think twice about the security in the back end? And then that plays into insurance also, because if all of those capabilities aren't there, well, why would I want to insure you if there's just so much risk? And with that, we're right at that 5 o'clock mark. Meta, please go ahead if you could be quick, and then we'll close up. You there, Meta?
Ryan,
Yeah, hello, hello.
Ryan.
This is Meta Man.
Don't know which other Meta it would be.
There's only one man. Meta Man. All right. Anyways, I'm sorry about that. I was ordering an ice cream, not for me.
It's okay.
Uh,
I
but
got
basic.
to close up.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Basically, okay. Speaking on what Zara was talking about, so could anybody upgrade the XRPL to be quantum proof? And also, when you're saying that if you haven't done any transactions on your hardware wallet, but don't you do a transaction moving like from an exchange to the wallet? Doesn't that still like count as a transaction?
Well, the public key would be being shared from the exchange side, and so until that wallet that you sent to submits a transaction, there's no way for anybody to have that public key. Now, here's another thing though that can happen with quantum computers: have a strong enough quantum computer that it can then guess every single secret phrase that's possible to exist in a blockchain, while you break every single wallet at the same time. So it also depends on how strong the actual quantum processing unit is, and then is it connected to the internet, and is it able to distribute this information to all of the nodes, and like the attack vectors wise, there's definitely still questions that go into it. But I gotta close up. It has been an amazing conversation as always. I'm sorry, NY, I know you just came back up there, man. But I hope everybody has a great rest of the night. I'll be back on Spaces in maybe like 45 minutes, an hour. uh, there's also a space that I was invited to by Crypto Queen. She's talking about fitness and I think finance over there, but definitely fitness. If you guys want to head over there, either way though, I really appreciate everybody that came in tonight. This was a fun one. All right, love you guys. See everybody on Monday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, possibly 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because I've been liking that time frame lately. And I'm going to do a whole thing on Evernode and Zahao next week. I know I didn't mention it much today because I kept it on the generative AI topic to finish it off this week, based off of the World Economic Forum conference and the DC FinTech that was really all basically on Gen AI. I'm going to do Evernode. Evernode audits had passed today from GoFio. So if you guys want to check them out, also super cool, and excited to see Evernode go live. But yep, love everyone. Have a great night, everybody.